Welcome in, Green Jeans. How are you this evening? Sit right down and let me tell you a tale. They say Los Angeles has no history. That it sprang up overnight, all sunshine and lies. But cities don't work that way. They grow like bad habits, layer by layer, mistake by mistake. And sometimes they bury things. I was hired to dig, not to believe. That's what I told myself. The job came through a back channel. Cash up front, no paperwork, no questions. They said the foundation survey didn't add up. Voids where there shouldn't be any. Echoes in the concrete. And that's when they called me. An archaeologist in a city that pretends it has nothing worth digging up. The entrance wasn't marked. Nothing ever is. Just a rusted service door behind a building nobody looks at anymore. I went down alone. The air changed fast. Cool, wet, old. Like the city was breathing through a wound it never meant to reopen. And my flashlight cut through the dark and hard angles. Comic book shadows too sharp to be natural. The kind of lighting that makes everything and every thought feel dangerous. The tunnels weren't smooth, but they weren't crude either. They seemed to have intention. Curves where there should have been corners. Patterns that didn't serve any modern purpose. This wasn't plumbing. This wasn't transit. But it was design. And that's when I felt it, that pressure in your chest, the one that tells you you're standing somewhere you weren't invited. I found markings, not letters, not symbols, warnings, shapes that suggested eyes, lines that curved like scales. The tunnel bent, and for a second the geometry stopped making any sense, like the city below was laid out for something that didn't walk upright. Something that crawled. Something that waited. I didn't find gold. I didn't find monsters. What I found was worse. I found proof that every city tells itself a story about what it's built on. And every once in a while, someone digs too deep and hears the echo of the lie cracking. Los Angeles doesn't hide its secrets underground. It builds over them. So, now we're talking about the Los Angeles lizard tunnels. I mean, the fact is that in the beginning, LA was built on layers, concrete, stories, forgotten burials. The surface sells its sunshine, its glamour, and reinvention. But beneath its streets is a persistent underground rumor. There are secrets below. Now, back in January of 1934, keep in mind, this is the height of the Great Depression. The Los Angeles Times dropped a massive, sensational, unbelievable headline. Lizard People's Catacomb City Hunted. The claim, an ancient underground civilization beneath downtown LA, older than Egypt and even Babylon. Forgotten dreams and gold miner nightmares. For a brief and strange moment in American history, the city of Los Angeles actually believed it might be true. Now, to give you a little context, the Great Depression had hollowed out the country, collapsed banks, soaring unemployment. I mean, people were living in, not Times Square, Central Park, for Christ's sake. I mean, you know, there were shanty towns around every major city. LA was no different. But Los Angeles was still growing. It was fragile and uncertain because it wasn't the Hollywood you think of when you think of, you know, today. They were transitioning from silent movies to the talkies. Major studios hadn't really started running. I mean, I think it was RKO was the big one in the town at the time. Universal, maybe, but I don't think so. But entire families were living on hope, rumor, and scraps of optimism. And into that uncertainty came a story promising hidden wealth beneath the city itself. Not somewhere far away in a jungle or desert, right there underneath your feet. Gold, lost knowledge, a forgotten civilization, just waiting to be rediscovered. The source wasn't a novelist or a showman. He was a practical mining engineer, G. Warren Shufelt. Now, Shufelt presented himself as a practical, technical, and grounded in engineering. Presented himself as practical, technical, and grounded in engineering. He wasn't selling magic. He wasn't selling some pie-in-the-sky dream. He was literally selling a discovery. And according to Shufelt, what lay beneath Los Angeles wasn't legendary or fantasy. It was just basically history. And apparently a history that supposedly began more than 5,000 years ago. Shufelt claimed that the world once faced a catastrophe so severe it nearly wiped out civilization. And he called it a tongue of fire. Deliberately vague, could have been a meteor, solar flare, divine judgment. Coronal mass ejections. These actually happened. In fact, I think one happened not too earlier than what he's talking about, which is probably why he used the tongue of fire motif, because we've seen what happens. It either happened in 28 or 38. I might be wrong. But the exact cause was less important than the result. The surface world became unlivable, and humanity was not prepared. But one race was. And according to Shufelt, it was a highly advanced race that existed alongside early humans. They were not primitive nor nomadic. They were engineers, architects, record keepers, and even planners who understood astronomy, geology, and construction. They saw disaster coming. While the surface world burned, they chose survival and went underground. They did not just hide in caves, they built a vast engineered refuge carved with precision and intent. The tunnels were laid out deliberately. They formed a symbolic shape. A lizard. A symbol of longevity, survival, and endurance. By human standards. The head was beneath the hills near what is now Dodger Stadium. I'm not sure if it's called Dodger Stadium anymore. Sorry. The body stretched out under downtown, Los Angeles. And the tail extended south beneath the Central Library. And at the heart of this underground city were great circular chambers, vaults, and inside them, Shufelt claimed there were 37 massive golden tablets. And each one was engraved with complete history of humanity before the catastrophe, a record of lost worlds, lost knowledge, and lost science. Sealed away, protected, and waiting for the moment humanity was ready to discover them, or, more importantly, rediscover them. And Shufelt believed that that moment had now arrived. So, Shufelt insisted that his story did not originate with him. He claimed it came from an ancient source, Native American oral tradition, specifically the Hopi people. As he claimed, they told the story to him, a man that was publicly identified as Little Chief Greenleaf, a keeper of sacred knowledge and a guardian of history passed down for thousands of years. And according to that history, the underground city beneath Los Angeles was entirely real. In Schufelt's telling, Little Chief Greenleaf explained that the underground city was not abandoned, it was sealed, protected. The golden tablets were not meant to enrich anyone. They were meant to preserve human history, warnings and lessons from a previous world destroyed by fire. He also claimed he was warned. He was warned that the city was sacred, but he believed discovery was inevitable and very necessary. Now, you might want to be asking yourself, and I'm kind of going off script for a second, why so many cultures use gold tablets? Gold is soft, malleable. Why the hell would you inscribe a history on gold. This is something that happens all the time, that people talk about golden tablets. Well, there's one major reason. Gold, while being malleable, is incorruptible. It doesn't corrode. It won't fall apart in 1,000 years. If you can seal it in a box, if you can find some way to protect it, the same gold that you have in front of you today, in 1,000 years, will still be there. Just because so many people why would they do it to gold? Gold's, soft. Well, again, it's easy to inscribe in gold, which means that if you use your smallest chisel, or however you're inscribing, because gold is so soft, it's easy to use your smallest piece to make a dent. You don't need something hefty like you would in, say, tungsten steel, where you have to make a bigger wedge for it to be seen. Just a little point of fact. So, now we get to a further point. The stories alone were not enough to be taken seriously. Shufelt knew he needed evidence, and he claimed to have it. He introduced a device he called the radio X-ray, claiming that his invention could see through the Earth itself to detect voids, tunnels, and precious metals hundreds of feet underground. He described it as a scientific breakthrough, combining radio waves, magnetism, and resonance, something no one else had. With his radio X-ray, Shufelt walked the streets of downtown Los Angeles block by block, intersection by intersection. Whenever the device reacted, he marked it as a tunnel, a chamber, or a vault. Over time, the marks began to connect, lines formed, nodes appeared, and gradually a pattern emerged. What Shufelt produced was an intricate map, a web of 285 passages with large circular rooms at key points. When viewed as a whole, the layout did resemble a lizard shape. The map placed specific landmarks directly above the tunnels, the Biltmore Hotel, the public library, downtown office buildings, and according to Shufelt, Angelenos were walking over an ancient city every day without knowing it. Remarkably, the city actually listened. This wasn't a fringe pamphlet or a back alley rumor. This was the freaking Los Angeles Times that covered the story seriously. Public interest exploded. Eventually, Shufelt petitioned the Los Angeles County Board of Supervisors to get permission to dig. He wanted to dig beneath Fort Moore Hill, just north of downtown. This was a particular site. And the city approved the request. The deal was simple. If he found treasure, the city of Los Angeles would receive 50%. Not if, when. They were expecting it. In early 1934, workers began digging a vertical shaft straight down into the hill. And hope was tangible. Crowds gathered, reporters waited. And the Depression made everyone hungry for a miracle. Good news of any kind would have been nice. Hell, news. Just something to distract them from their downtrodden days. The shaft extended deeper and deeper. 100, 200, 250 feet. Instead of tunnels or chambers or golden tablets, the dig encountered something far more mundane: mud, water, and unstable earth. They had struck the local water table, and reality was beginning to push back against the myth. The genuine story is not about... Was that right? Okay, here we go. I apologize, I scrolled too far. By the spring of 1934, the excavation at Fort Moore Hill was over. The shaft had gone down roughly 250 feet. There were no tunnels, no chambers, no golden tablets. Only mud, water, and unstable sediment. The money had just ran out, and public interest had faded. The shaft was filled in, and G. Warren Shufelt disappeared from the headlines. But this story did not disappear with him. Now, we have to understand why the story endured. We have to look at the device that started it, the radio X-ray. Despite its name, it was not an X-ray and was not capable of seeing through rock or soil. What Shufelt described matches something much older, dowsing. A pendulum or rod that reacts to the ideomotor effect, unconscious muscle movement. When a person expects a result, their body provides it. The movement feels external, but it is not. There is little evidence that Shufelt was deliberately trying to deceive anyone. He never became wealthy or fleet with investor money. In fact, he lost most of what he had. And what he appears to have been is a sincere believer. A man convinced that his device worked. And once he believed, every signal confirmed what he already expected to find. And that's how the map came to be. Shufelt walked the city, the device reacted, marks placed on paper, lines drawn between. Human brains are extremely good at finding patterns. Given enough points, meaning emerges. The lizard shape was not discovered underground, it was assembled above ground, in the hopes and dreams of the people watching. But Shufelt, he did not invent the entire story. Its core comes from a real and sacred source, Hopi oral tradition, specifically the story of Anu Sanam, the ant people. According to Hopi mythology, previous worlds were destroyed, one by fire, and when that happened, the ant people guided humans underground, where they sheltered them, fed them, protected them until the surface world was safe again. This genuine story is not about advanced technology or treasure. It's about survival, community, and mutual aid. The ant people were not rulers. They were helpers, teachers, and representatives of cooperation in the face of disaster. It is a deeply spiritual story, and it has absolutely nothing to do with the geography of Los Angeles. Shufelt transformed the story completely. Ants became reptiles. A refuge became a vault. And spiritual knowledge became gold bars. Which is another problem. There's no credible historical record existing of Hopi chief named Little Chief Greenleaf. And many historians believe the figure was absolutely fabricated. Or perhaps a performer hired to give the story authority during the Depression. And with that, the myth began to unravel. By the time Shufelt's story unraveled, one more important detail remained. Los Angeles really does have tunnels. They're not ancient, though. Beneath downtown is a layered network of underground spaces built for entirely practical reasons. Steam tunnels, utility corridors, service passages, transit infrastructure, all sorts of reasons. The tunnels were absolutely constructed in the late 19th and early 20th centuries as LA rapidly expanded, and from a small town to a major city. And over time, they took on new uses. Early Los Angeles needed ways to move goods, energy, and people efficiently. Steam tunnels carried heat to buildings, utility tunnels protected electrical lines, and basement corridors allowed hotels to move supplies discreetly. There were also pedestrian tunnels and early transit passages connecting to a streetcar system that no longer exists. Thank you, major modern automotive industry. Also off script, but look into it. One of these times, actually, I'll do what happened. That might be something I look into next, is what really happened to streetcars. Because it's a fascinating story of greed, corruption, and absolute destruction of a system that absolutely worked, was profitable, and everybody loved. Just to sell cars. But as the city was regraded and reshaped, many tunnels were sealed, abandoned, or forgotten. But they never disappeared. And then came Prohibition. By making alcohol illegal in the United States, it didn't diminish the demand. And in Los Angeles, Prohibition created a very lucrative underground economy, quieter, more efficient than its East Coast counterparts. Instead of shootouts and gang wars, LA just relied on logistics. These tunnels, forgotten, lost, abandoned, they were perfect for that. Bars, hotels, and restaurants repurposed existing underground passages to move alcohol discreetly. Liquor arrived through ports, rail yards, and warehouses, and then traveled underground. The King Eddie Saloon is one of the most famous examples. Behind its walls and beneath its floors were hidden routes that allowed alcohol to move in and out without attracting attention. Smugglers weren't just criminals. They were businessmen, politicians, and police officers. Prohibition worked because everyone quietly participated. Most people didn't believe in the law. But some tunnels did have darker purposes. There were service passages behind government buildings, connections near courthouses, and routes used to move prisoners away from the press. There are persistent stories of a coroner's tunnel near the old Hall of Records that was used to move bodies discreetly. Whether every story is true or not, one thing is clear. The underground had become a place for what the city didn't want seen. And since the 1930s, well, Los Angeles has been excavated relentlessly, freeways cut deep. Skyscraper foundations reach way down to the bedrock in a lot of cases. Metro rail lines tunneled directly through the areas Shufelt claimed were filled with vaults. If an ancient city had existed, it would have been found. Instead, what engineers encounter is completely consistent. Soft sediment, tar deposits, ancient marine fossils, and ice age bones. No voids, no collapsed tunnels, and no evidence of human structures older than a few hundred years. And here's why. Geology alone ends the story. Downtown Los Angeles sits on unstable, water-rich sediment. Any underground structure built 5,000 years ago without reinforced concrete, steel, it would have disappeared a long time ago. Collapsed, eaten by the earth itself. I mean, there is a fault line. So earthquakes alone would have destroyed any ancient city. The ground simply can't support a massive ancient city. The earth itself is the final witness. And yet, the story survives. Not because it's true, but because Los Angeles is a city that feels layered. A place where the past is constantly buried beneath the future. Schufelt's myth promised that beneath the chaos was an order, that beneath the desperation was hidden salvation. There are no lizard people under Los Angeles, but there are real tunnels, real stories, and a reminder that sometimes the truth beneath a myth is as fascinating as the legend itself. So what do we think? Hope you enjoyed listening. I talked it a bit fast. I mean, it was supposed to take a little bit longer, but I'm still learning how to narrate properly. I probably talk too fast in many cases. But the reality is that often these, oh, thank you. These ideas that, there's some ancient lost city, I might believe that under Appalachia or Appalachia, depending on where you are. But under Los Angeles, basically anything West Coast, no. It's too geologically active. I mean, Seattle has a Seattle Underground that even in the time that it has, only like 100 years, we'll just go for. In Chicago, sure. There might be hidden underground treasures underneath there, but by now, all of the skyscrapers and construction would have destroyed them. Because don't forget for a second, the companies have reasons to hold off. See, this is the other reason why I wanted to talk about this. Even though they have a legal obligation to expose when they see something, to say something, when they find artifacts or even ancient tunnels, they're under obligation that they have to. But not for a second do I believe that every company does it. We have no idea how many lost artifacts, lost cities, lost whatever we don't see anymore. And probably never will. Because they were buried layer by layer. Street block by street block. Because the people doing it had no reason to stop. Because they don't care about history. They don't care about, hell, what may have actually come from something like that. They only care about their bottom line. And no matter how much we do environmental studies and, impact studies and archaeological, validity or invalidity studies, it's ultimately the companies pay them. So why do you think that they would bother not just, tsunamis in time. Somebody could have discovered it on one of the islands somewhere and realized that it was going to stop the next gated community or that mall from being built in the 70s. So they just ignored it. Dig it up, trash it. Don't let anybody tell what it is. Make sure it's completely decimated. I mean, just Manhattan alone was an ancient Native American site. And we've done everything we possibly could to scour that island clean of any history it may have still held. We give no thoughts to our history and how it repeats and how often we have to destroy ourselves before we realize maybe stop valuing money above all else. It really saddens me because just before stream, well, actually it was a while back, but reading or watching a video about a guy talking about how Xbox just did their big summer Games Fest thing or whatever the hell they call theirs. And now they're announcing layoffs in Xbox. Even though last year alone, they had 1 billion people on their system playing games. But for some reason, that's not able to make them money. That doesn't make them profit. That to me makes no sense. That to me tells me that your business model is wrong. They want to tell us that we don't buy enough. How can we? When everything's so expensive, we have to make choices. When you try to squeeze as much out of the person who's willing to buy your product as possible, you're ensuring that they won't be able to buy a second product. You're ensuring that somebody who's building something has no reason to pay attention to the history below. Even though the LA lizard tunnels are, complete bunk. Even if he had a machine that maybe some rudimentary ground penetrating radar thing that he didn't realize what he actually had. In all likelihood, he was finding either ancient tunnel, or not ancient, but recent tunnels that were lost or abandoned or just were already there. 2, geologically unstable areas that he didn't realize that were just sediment and stuff left over from the last earthquake, not an actual void because it was less dense than the area surrounding it. His machine may have been doing something. I absolutely believe that there was a possibility that it wasn't just him being a a snake oil salesman, because that doesn't seem to be, in the research I could get, that wasn't something that he seemed to want. He truly believed in what he was finding. He truly mapped out something. So he was a true believer. He literally bet everything he had on that Fort Moore dig. He lost everything. That is not somebody that's scamming someone. That is a true believer that just doesn't realize how lost he is. And Little Chief Greenleaf, my guess is that was an actual real person, or at least he thought it was a real person that told him the story. He just was too naive to realize it was just a story, bro. Probably told over a couple of drinks that they weren't supposed to be having. And this Little Chief Greenleaf was probably just somebody that decided to spin a yarn while they're sitting over drinks. And once the lie had been told, they were too deep. They weren't going to back out. I mean, what else are you going to do, right? But, I mean, I don't know. I find it interesting. I found it very interesting myself on the story, because, I mean, you hear the lizard tunnels under LA. There's only two responses you can have. Really. That it's complete BS, or that somebody's trying to hide something. Well, the reality is it's a little bit of both. The reality, like most things, is not black and white. It's shades of gray in between. You have a guy that absolutely believes in the truth and veracity of the tale he is spinning. Because a tale was told to him that he believed, because some machine that he made up, that he thought worked properly, and it very well could have been working properly. I think a lot of people discount, because there are stories of him walking around with some kind of device. It was akin to dowsing, except for it also involved electricity. We know that it had little batteries to it. We know that it had current running through it. It had, I think, vacuum tubes too, which means he had some kind of calculations. Because vac tubes were transistors. Now, it would be an extremely rudimentary machine, and it would probably be akin to EMF reader, but it was reacting to something, and that's what he believed. And so he had an assistant with him. I mean, he's literally paying somebody out of his own money to walk the streets with him, to make marks on the map where they get readings. This is not a scam artist. Because he wasn't sharing the money. It was just pure hire. He hired that person. And then they moved on. They kept doing what they were doing. And it's sad to me that we automatically dismiss without understanding that maybe he had been onto something that we now use. Whether it's rudimentary ground penetrating radar or EMF reader that he didn't understand what he was using. But we often say, oh, he was just a shyster. He was just a myth maker. But for a time, he gave people during the Prohibition era, during Depression era, something to hope for. Don't you kind of hope that you could be that person? In a dismal time, that you might be able to just give people hope. And I don't think he meant to give people false hope. I think he truly meant to give people hope that there was something more. And for all we know, there may have been ancient ruins. Not of the reptilian variety, but old Native American settles. I mean, the old missions even of the Spanish. They dotted all up and down the West Coast to a certain degree. But damn sure, near LA, San Diego, there were ancient missions. Well, I keep saying ancient. Classical, the American classical era, Old West. And Los Angeles was built over the top of them. And you got to remember that Los Angeles built and grew uniquely for towns at that time. And most people don't realize why Los Angeles grew so fast and so big. Water rights. The city of Los Angeles had the best water rights of all the surrounding cities. So as water started drying up, these little townships that are now neighborhoods of Los Angeles got bought up. Not bought up, they decided to join Los Angeles so that they too could have good water rights. That's really how Los Angeles grew. It wasn't because so many people moved in, which they had their fair share, but it was also because smaller towns all around them joined up. Ancient cultures in ancient America did describe tribes, groups, and shrines. Yeah. Well, I'm sure they did. I mean, LA isn't that far from the Southwest. There's desert just right back behind their mountains. There's plenty of lizards back there. I'm sure there was some tribe back there that had some kind of lizard-like spirit that represented the desert or the land or something. Medicine, which is often what snakes and lizards represent, deep inside. So it wouldn't surprise me that, somewhere around LA, there were actual temples of some kind to lizard spirits. You're absolutely correct. Were they actually, lizard people tunnels? Nah. I mean, it's where the myth bridges reality. To be perfectly honest, because myth has so much to offer, but you have to look at the truth in the myth. You can't just take the myth whole hog. You have to remember that this was written by man for man. I don't care who or what you think, it's not divinely inspired. Even if it was, just think about a game of telephone. Where somebody whispers in one ear and it goes on down the line, and that the person who says the first, the phrase for the first time and the person that says the phrase for the last time, those things don't match. Oral history, while at times is more accurate than we think, it can also be completely inaccurate. And we need to understand that there's a difference between somebody who's writing down history because they believe in it, or remembering history because they believe in it, true oral histories, or somebody that doesn't believe it, sees it as stories made up by quote unquote barbarian tribes. I put that in quote to put the idea that the people writing it down don't necessarily have to believe in what they're writing down, which means they're not going to copy it with the proper weight, with the proper belief behind it. They're going to put things in that make the people seem stupid. It makes it so much easier to control the people when you say, well, these are your beliefs, right? Well, yeah, but not. The whole meme of, well, yes, but actually no. Like you have it accurate, but you're missing the heart of it. It's like those people that talk about, do you adhere to the heart of the law or the letter of the law? And that's a huge separation for a lot of people. Because there's times they want to adhere to the letter of the law. And then there's times they will just adhere to the heart of the law. But for each person, that's different. For each thing, that's different. And it's difficult. It's difficult to sit there and go, because people want it black and white. Especially in today's day and age. Something like the LA lizard tunnels may have grabbed the zeitgeist of the news cycle for about a week. And that would have been it. Regardless of the veracity of whatever the guy found later, that wouldn't matter at all to these people. It would have just been nothing. It would have been useless for people to really believe because it couldn't bring them money. And in the Depression era, that is exactly what people were most worried about. Money. They wanted money because that's the only way they could survive. Sound familiar? There's a reason why I bring up the LA lizard tunnels. Because it is a time in life where we're heading towards a very catastrophic moment. I don't think I'm some, great seer to see this. That as much as we need data centers, we don't need as many as they're putting up. Nor do we need them for what they're trying to use them for. But data centers are the heart and soul of how we live our modern life. I hope people really understand that. Because, sure, we don't need data centers, backed up to everybody's garage. But we do need some. Some of these that they're trying to build are absolutely insane and stupid. Because there's no point to them. In a year or two, you know what the boom is going to be? Repurposing these defunct data centers that are half-ass built, or even maybe fully built, just never implemented, for something else. We may see a boom in brutalist style apartments. I'm serious. That may be exactly what they end up being, is being converted into apartments because, we really need housing more so than we need anything else right now in America. We don't have, there's only so much land in America and we haven't even scratched the surface. If I remember correctly, there is so much empty space and unused space in America that, if I remember correctly, we could absorb the population of the European Union and the British Isles and not even really notice. We have the space. What we don't have is the infrastructure, the jobs, the housing that would require. We've put the cart before the horse because we want to get as much money out of our housing as possible. So we're not really thinking about what's going on with it. We want more and more people to move to the cities, which is my thought process on why they're putting up the data centers where they are. They're trying to push people away from rural areas. They want them in the cities. The only problem is that there's not enough housing around the cities for the people they're trying to push there. I don't know what they're going to do. I don't know what their end game is. There's plenty of different people that have, these conspiracy theories that, they're trying to control us. They're trying to, use a virus to whatever. I mean, people freak out and nothing comes of it. Nothing really comes of it because there's nothing there to begin with. Half of your conspiracies that are even proven true are literally just about people taking advantage of a situation. The light bulb conspiracy. Why did that work? Well, because they were in a race to build something that was not fiscally sustainable. The infinite light bulb. You buy one, you never have to buy another. Of course, they didn't really think about the whole process of people wanting different colors or different, shapes of light bulbs for different needs. They would have had more than enough to keep them sustainable for generations. Then we have the move to the LED light bulbs, where you have to replace the whole stupid fixture rather than just unscrew it and put a new one in. That pisses me off more than anything else because it is just designed to make you buy a whole thing. And the fact that they've made basically incandescents illegal, but I mean, nobody's selling them. Well, nobody wants those anyway. I guarantee you they damn well do. Why do you think some of the most popular expensive LED fixtures are ones that mimic incandescent light bulbs? Because I guarantee you, if you do a study on the frequency, you'll find that incandescent light bulb frequency is more adapted to human eyes and the way of human life than LED. We're not meant to have so much bright blue light. I mean, just look at how many people are getting night blind who can't drive at night because they're too used to these bright days, these bright lights. We're killing our ability to even see at night, even if we want to. People say, oh, you keep your house dark. It's like, what do you mean? I have all my windows cracked open. You can see inside. I just don't like unnatural light. I don't like turning on every light in my house. I like most of it to be natural lighting. As I think most people really do. I think it's better for us and better for our eyes and better for our health. I don't know. I'm kind of going off on a tangent here. I'm sorry. But I think that's kind of what you guys do this for. Why you come around on Wednesdays is because, I talk, I yap. But I am going to run my ad a little quick because I have to use the restroom, but I'll be back in 5. So I'll be back in 5. Talk to you guys soon. And I'm back. So, I don't know, kind of expected more discussion, more thought on, well, I guess what you thought of the lizard tunnels. Was there more? Is there some truth? Was there something I missed? Did you guys, I don't know. Did you guys have an idea? If not, I can just segue to another topic of discussion. I'm good at that. I have plenty. In fact, I've updated the story so I can actually do kind of a dramatic reading of scene 1 again and maybe go straight into scene 2 of the John Rowland story. Let's get this right. The town was at home, smack in the middle of cornfields. Not a destination, but on the way to other places. It was one of the many sleepy little towns that only have a couple of freeway exits, and the major commercial areas are clustered around those. Outside of that, you have the historic downtown, the area that is constantly struggling, but it just somehow always makes it. Even if it's just another year. The various businesses, the ones that support the booster clubs, the local organizations, the ones that really are the heartbeat of a town, those are the ones the real townspeople use. That is to say, this town is just like many others, and yet there's a certain something here that gives people a reason to stop and breathe. The graffiti is of the high school variety. No gang tags, just kids wanting to be immortal for another year or so. Once you get away from the off-ramps, everything just slows down. The town looks straight out of an advertisement. Come, live here, clean, clear, and friendly. Somehow, it is avoided the certain level of distance many other towns succumb to. The slow erosion of the foundations of the community that infects many other towns. The police still walk the streets, preferring that to driving. They smile, nod, being one with the community. The kids play at the parks, the sandlots, ride bikes all across town. And parents, they feel safe letting their kids out to play and not constantly needing to be observed or checked in on. The kind of childhood that only inhabits memory anymore. At the local high school, home to the Ravens, the heart of the town. The Ravens sports teams are often found helping local farmers with harvest, downtown cleanup. The coach, who also happens to be the local mayor, he takes great pride in the city, and as do his teams. Sure, some kids gripe about doing free community service. What's up, Jade? You want me to start over? I just started reading my story that I'm writing. This is chapter 1. We haven't gotten very far. Oh, no problem. It happens. Just continue? Okay. Like literally, I'm only 2 paragraphs in if you want to hear it from the beginning. I am literally only 2 paragraphs in. Okay. The town was at home, smack in the middle of the cornfields. Not a destination, but on the way to other places. It was one of the many sleepy little towns that only have a couple freeway exits. And all of the major commercial areas are clustered around those. Outside of that, you have the historic downtown, the area that is constantly struggling, but somehow always seems to make it, even if it is just another year. The various businesses, the ones that support the booster club, the local organizations, the ones that really are the heart of the town, those are the ones the town people use. That's to say that this town is just like many others, and yet there is a certain something here that gives people a reason to stop and breathe. The graffiti is of the high school variety. No gang tags, just kids wanting to be immortal for another year or so. And once you get away from the off-ramps, well, everything slows down. The town looks straight out of an advertisement. Come, live here, clean, clear, friendly. And somehow it has avoided that certain level of distance many others have succumbed to. That slow erosion of foundations of the community that has infected so many other towns. The police here still walk the streets. They prefer that to driving their patrols. They smile, nod, being one with the community. The kids play at the parks, the sandlots, and ride bikes across town. Parents feel safe letting their kids out to play and not constantly needing to be observed or checked in on. The kind of childhood that only inhabits memory anymore. The local high school, home to the Ravens, the heart of the town. The Ravens sports teams are often found helping local farmers with harvest, helping the downtown stay clean. The coach is also the local mayor. He takes great pride in his city, and so do his teams. Sure, some kids gripe about doing free community service, but this also means they can get out of drills on occasion, so they don't gripe too much. The school stadium, built with booster money, community help, and pride. No graffiti traces these walls, just a giant image of a raven with deep purple eyes. The school's colors are black, gray, and purple, so the stadium is painted likewise. Parking lot is quickly emptying. All except one car can be seen driving away. The sun is setting over the field. One player left standing on the green gridiron. The air was cold and clear, had a crispness to it. It was a fine September dusk over the football field. The sky split into gradients of violet, scarlet, and amber. The field lights were off, making a ticking sound as they gave up their heat. But John had no need for them tonight. All he had, his rhythm and his steps. He slid on his earbuds, worn and gray from use, and he pressed play on the MP3 player. A heavy bass line pulsed into his ears, instantly taking him to his mental center. Retro wave music always flooded his senses, always pushed the world away. Weighty synth tones swelled, washing him in an internal neon light. A drifting saxophone and trumpet flailing at the night. Percussion, the heartbeat of the song. John closed his eyes for a fraction of a second, the neon-soaked tempo taking root in his chest. The scouts saw John as the center of the team. The scouts saw John as the center of the team. To the team, he was the dependable quarterback. I really need to reword that. But to John, standing on that 40-yard line, he was grace, he was smooth, he was a dancer. John had agonized over upcoming game. Last year's state champions had analyzed their tapes. The offensive coach and him had been trying to come up with a play that would break through their defense. Then one night, sitting at home, he and his parents were watching an old Gene Kelly movie, and Mr. Kelly had done a peculiar role during an arduous tap routine. And this one move inspired John. The play had formed suddenly in his mind. Thinking of the backup dancers as the line and him as Mr. Kelly, John saw the music in the play, and the music had flow. That was what they needed to break the champs. Flow. Not rigid drills, not a wall blocking, but fluid and flexible movements. All right, John whispered to himself, the cold air catching his breath. Neon switchback. Take one. 200 yards away, past the chain-link perimeter fence, and obscured in the heavy shadow of an overgrown oak tree, dark and unassuming, sat a parked sedan. The engine cold, and the interior more so. And at the steering wheel, a man in a heavy canvas jacket adjusted a pair of tiny binoculars, focusing through the passenger side window. The view framed the kid on the field. The kid looked absurd. He was bobbing his head, executing odd, fluid cross steps, like he was on a dance floor, completely disconnected from the reality of the football field. The man lowered the binoculars and picked up a cheap, prepaid flip phone from the cup holder. He flipped it open, green glow illuminating his jaw, and a 5 o'clock shadow accentuated that jawline. He didn't know the kid's name. He hadn't been given a name. The brief from the contractor had been 3 lines. High school lot, gray sedan, monitoring and log the marks routine. He checked his watch, 6:15 p.m. Target is still running drills. He typed out in a terse, clumsy text message. Kid's got no situational awareness. Head completely in the clouds. No thoughts, head empty. He hit send. The phone chirped, and he tossed it back into the cup holder. And he pulled his collar up against the creeping autumn chill and raised the binoculars once again. It was boring, but easy surveillance. A private job handed down from the boss, and he didn't know why the boss wanted eyes on the suburban teenager, and he didn't care. The money cleared every Friday, and that was the only math that mattered. And out on the field, John called the snap in his head. And instead of a standard drop back, he executed a fluid cross-stepping glide to his left, which mimicked a dancer's smooth steps. His body weight leaned heavily one way, his eyes locking onto an imaginary wide receiver on the left flank. He knew exactly what the defense would see. A quarterback committing entirely to a left side bullet pass. Then, right as the beat dropped in his ears, John pivoted. It wasn't an athletic scramble. It was a graceful spinning. A turn that utilized his core and balance. A move born entirely from the private choreography he practiced in his bedroom. He swept behind the imaginary wall of his defenders, his body gliding effortlessly across the turf to the right side. The kinetic energy traveled up from his feet, through his hips, and directly into his right arm. But he waited a beat for the phantom defense to adjust to the feint. John snapped his gaze back to the original target downfield, a canvas bullseye hanging from the distant goalposts, and he let that ball fly. It sliced through the air It sliced through the twilight air with a tight, flawless spiral, riding the crest of the music. Rasp! Right in the dead center of the red bullseye. John let out a breathless laugh, pumping his fist. The neon switchback felt like it would work. It was elegant, unpredictable, and completely his. He didn't have the confidence to show his teammates why the footwork worked. But the results didn't lie. He spent another 10 minutes gathering the footballs, completely lost in his own little world. And he tossed the mesh bag over his shoulder and headed for the parking lot. And from the shadow of the oak tree, the man in the canvas jacket watched the gray sedan pull out of the school parking lot. He waited 3 seconds, twisted the key in the ignition, and let the engine purr to life. He didn't turn on his headlights. I really wish I could read better. It isn't my fault. He didn't turn his headlights on until the kid crossed the intersection a block ahead. He maintained a disciplined, unhurried distance. 3 cars back, 4 cars back. The kid drove like an amateur, never checking his mirrors, fingers tapping rhythmically against the steering wheel to some invisible beat. It was almost too easy. They moved out of the commercial district and into the quiet, winding blacktop of the residential suburbs. The streetlights grew sparser here, separated by deep stretches of manicured lawns and dark driveways. Up ahead, the kids' brake lights flared. The gray sedan signaled and made a smooth right turn onto a quiet, well-lit street that terminated in a dark cul-de-sac. The watcher didn't follow him down the turn. Instead, the man behind the wheel kept his foot steady on the gas, drove straight past the entrance of the neighborhood without breaking his stride. He glanced down the street as he rolled past, noting the exact colonial house where the kid's car was pulling into the driveway. He pulled over a quarter-mile down the main road, killed the headlights, and opened the flip phone. "Mark is down for the night," he typed. "Home address confirmed. Standing by for the next deployment." Yes, we were just getting to Act 2. We just finished Act 1. And welcome in, Infinite. How are you this evening? The Roland home, a modest 2-story colonial at the end of a quiet cul-de-sac. It resembles every house on the block. It had a pristine, edged and manicured lawn, a porch light, incredibly bright, casting a wide protective arc of white light across the concrete driveway. The house was the color of a white sand beach, with red trimmed windows and doors. It even had window boxes filled with flowers, and they felt just as advertised. The perfect image of a perfect household. John let himself in through the heavy front door, a metal clank of the latch echoing in the warm entryway. The entry leads directly to the kitchen, and just off to the right, the front room. The short hallway was adorned in a couple of photographs of special times in John's life. One, a photo of John as a child in a school play, and the next is some generic one of John holding a trophy. The warm wood of the stairs to the left contrasts with the clean off yellow of the walls. Just bright enough to feel cheerful, but not so bright to overwhelm. A rich, savory scent of garlic and roasting chicken flowed down the hall, making his stomach growl. Mom was at it again, he thought. She knows I love her roast chicken. She would have meals like this prepared for when he got home from practice. And that's when it hit him. He was late. He looked at the hall clock. 45 minutes late, to be exact. He was definitely going to hear about this. And his shoulders sagged in expectation. "Mom, Dad, I'm home," John called out, tossing his keys into the porcelain bowl by the door. And from the kitchen, the sharp, rapid clack, clack, clack of a knife on a cutting board rang out and stopped. His mother, Veronica, stepped into the hallway. She was wiping her hands on a dish towel, her sharp eyes instantly scanning John from head to toe, as she always did when he came home, before settling into a stern but neutral expression, waiting to see what he had to say before deciding herself what needed to be said. She possessed an effortless, easy grace that always made the house feel like a sanctuary. I'm sorry, Mom. I stayed late to map out a new play on the field," John said, heading for the stairs to drop his backpack. I just got completely locked into the timing of it." And from the dining room, his father, Colin, appeared. He was wearing a crisp, expensive dress shirt, sleeves rolled up to his forearms, revealing thick wrists. He looked every bit the successful corporate accountant, quiet, observant, and instantly commanding respect just by entering the space. John looked at him, and a wave of admiration flowed over him. This was the blueprint of the man he hoped to become. There was a look of surprise on Colin's face as his hand moved from behind his back. The surprise was replaced with a look of pain. "Ah, damn it!" A sharp smile breaking through the grimace. "Sitting at the desk all day. It's catching up to me. My lower back is locked up tight." "You need to stretch more, Dad. You're getting stiff," John joked, taking 2 steps up the stairs. His dad was the epitome of a healthy man in his late 40s. John never thought of his parents as getting old. He hoped to be in half as good a shape as them at their age. "Easy for you to say, quarterback. Go wash up, son." Dang it, I missed it. Where were I? Sorry, I scrolled. Easy for you to say, quarterback," Colin chuckled. He patted his back pocket, pulling out a sleek personal smartphone. "Go wash up. Your mother spent 2 hours on this chicken, and if it gets cold, no amount of footwork is going to save us." "On it," John laughed as he disappeared up the stairs. The moment John's footsteps faded onto the second-floor landing, the easygoing warmth vanished from Colin's face. He stood perfectly still in the hallway, his eyes locked on the front door. He unlocked his phone, and a single text message sat on the screen from an unsaved number. "Mark is down for the night. Home address confirmed. Standing by for next instructions." Colin's jaw tightened. He deleted the message with a swift swipe of his thumb, his face hardening into a cold, analytical mask. He looked over at Veronica, who was standing by the kitchen threshold. His fingers tapped away a quick message. "Follow Mark at 7 a.m. Stand by for further instructions." The silence between them was absolute, but a heavy, mutual understanding passed in a single glance. They trusted John. What they didn't trust was the world. Veronica turned and walked back into her home office that was just off the kitchen. The office was cold and efficient. It would have felt at home in a high-rise building full of office workers. The walls were no-nonsense white. The desk and chair were black and chrome. The desktop was organized, neat, and everything was in its place. She clicked the save, closed the word processor, and shut off the monitor. She took a deep breath, smoothing her apron as she walked back out into the kitchen. The loving, bright mother completely back in control. Downstairs, the table was set for 3. So, what do we think? That was scene 2. Am I getting better? Please don't tell me my mic screwed up and you guys couldn't hear me. Oh, I'm just curious. What do we think? Am I bad? I mean, it's good? Well, I enjoyed it. I can definitely tell you that. His parents are kooky. Yes, they're supposed to be. I'm not sure if how polished scene 3 is, but it is only just 3 pages. Yes, actually, it very much is. So, I mean, if y'all want, I can continue on. I think scene 5 is where I'm really confident in. Like, beyond that, it gets pretty rocky because it's rough. I mean, this is all still pretty rough. Act 1, Scene 3, Spreading Wings. The dining room rested off the right of the kitchen and flowed into the front room. The sound of silverware clinking echoed down the kitchen tile. It made the silence seem louder and oppressive. John was used to his family catching up at dinner, talking over their days. Yet, he had ruined it. He made Mom keep the food warming in the kitchen. She had been chopping vegetables in the kitchen to busy herself, while he had kept the family waiting for their dinner. He felt bad, but he also knew he needed the time to practice the new play. So he kept his eyes on his plate, methodically cutting his chicken. The warmth that usually filled the dining room table had vanished, and a heavy, suffocating silence had replaced it. Across from him, Cullen ate with a slow, deliberate precision. To John's left, Veronica was barely touching her food, her posture uncharacteristically rigid. This was his fault, and he needed to clear the air. He needed to find a way to start the conversation. John took a breath, deciding to break the ice. The seasoning's really good, Mom. But she knew this already. But he did want them to get talking. Thank you, John, Veronica said, her voice polite but tight. I'm glad you made it home in time to taste it while it was still warm. John closed his eyes for a second and he let out a quiet sigh. He set his fork down. Look, I said I was sorry. I lost track of time. It was just 45 minutes. 45 minutes on an empty field after dark without letting anyone know where you were, Cullen said calmly. Whoops, that's supposed to be calmly. I apologize. 45 minutes on an empty field after dark without letting anyone know where you were, Cullen said calmly, setting his knife down. He didn't raise his voice, but the sheer weight of his presence filled the room. In this house, John, we have rules. Curfew is 6 o'clock on practice days. We don't make these guidelines to annoy you. We make them so we know you are safe. Safe from what? John asked, his frustration finally bubbling to the surface. He looked between the two of them, genuinely baffled. It's a high school football field. It's 3 miles from here. I was throwing a ball at a piece of canvas. It doesn't matter where it is, Veronica interrupted, her bright demeanor entirely eclipsed by a flash of genuine underlying anxiety. Her fingers had tightened around a cloth napkin. The world isn't a playground, John. Anything could have happened. A flat tire, a reckless driver. You were completely alone in the dark. You became a sitting duck out there. If someone wanted to... She caught herself, cutting off the sentence abruptly. If someone wanted to what, Mom? John pressed, throwing his hands up. What, steal my cleats? Come on, I'm not a kid anymore. I turn 18 in just a few months. Colin went to speak, but John kept going, the words pouring out of him. He knew if he didn't try it now, he wouldn't be able to in the future. He had to take this chance. I'm going to college next week. If the scouts like what they see, I could be halfway across the country by August. I'm going to have to live in a dorm. I'm going to have to walk across a huge campus at night. I need to learn how to function on my own. If you guys freak out over 45 minutes at my own high school, how am I supposed to survive out there? He looked at his father, pleading for him to understand. You always tell me to be realistic, Dad. Well, realistically, you can't keep me in a bubble forever. John desperately needed them to understand, and he knew his dad would have to be the first domino to fall. His dad was the one to lay out the rules, but his mom, well, he knew, was the one to make them. But Dad was the one to enforce them. The room rang with silence, a rare sound, and very unwelcome. John's words hung in the air like a physical blow. Colin sat perfectly still, his eyes locked on his son. He looked at the determined jaw, the fire in his eyes, and then down at the boy's hands, strong, capable, and hands that were already growing into a man's. Colin looked across the table at Veronica. The hyper-vigilant mask she wore had cracked, but not with anger. It was a profound, striking sadness. She looked at Colin, and in that silent communication, there was no tactical calculation. There was just the painful, universal realization of two parents seeing their clock had run out. They had spent 18 years building a fortress around this boy. But the boy was ready to walk out the front gate. That silent communication, that shifted something in both. Colin cleared his throat, his shoulders dropping an inch as he leaned back in his chair. The sternness had left his face, replaced by a weary, gentle warmth. He's right, Ronnie. Veronica looked down at her plate, a faint, bittersweet smile touching her lips. She let out a long, slow breath, releasing the tight grip she had on her napkin. I know. I know he is. Colin looked back at John, his sharp wit returning to diffuse the heavy air. Well, that was hell of a speech, and if you read the defense as well as you just read us, well, you're going to state this year. John blinked, caught completely off guard by the sudden surrender. Wait, really? In all his years, he had never won the curfew argument. They would always counter with, it's not you we don't trust, it's everyone else. Really, Colin said, his voice dropping into a deeply affectionate, earnest tone. Your mother and I, we worry, probably more than we should. It's hard to break the habit of protecting you, John, but you're right. You're growing up. And you're doing exactly what you're supposed to do. You're building a life. Veronica reached across the table, placing her warm hand over John's. The bright, easy grace was back in her eyes, although just a little glassy. We just love you, John. That's all this is. But we promise to try and let you spread your wings a bit more. No more helicoptering. John smiled, a massive wave of relief washing over him. He squeezed his mother's hand. Thanks, Mom. Thanks, Dad. I promise I'll text you next time. I won't leave you hanging. See that you don't. Colin smiled, raising his water glass and a mock toast. Now finish your chicken before your mother finds a way to force feed it to us. The laughter returned to the room, light, easy, if a little strained. John dug back into his dinner and completely at peace, entirely unaware of the tragic irony of the conversation. His parents had realized that all their time raising John, the plans, the rules, the life they built was coming to fruition. And now it was time to start letting go. End of Act 1, Scene 3. Almost let the cat out of the bag. Felt that punctuation. Very angsty old teen me. Yes, exactly. I'm trying to tap into some parts of like my childhood, the frustration, things wish I had said, arguments I definitely had with my parents. I'm gonna see how long Infinite is, because driving. I don't know if she's still listening or if she just meant she was lurking. If she's still listening, I can continue on. Oh, that's not supposed to happen. You've been struck by a truck. I'm going to give you another truck because the video didn't play. I mean, you couldn't see it anyway. Got to be able to see it. You've been struck by a truck. Because, half the fun is what it does. It wants your soup. It wants your soup. I like those. I will eventually have more as I find things that are fun enough to add. Things change, things happen. I think I'm going to continue on to Scene 4. Act 4. Act 1, Scene 4, 12 seconds. The sideline was a wall of noise, freezing breath and panic. Scoreboard clock was a cruel red smudge against the black December sky. 12 seconds remaining in the fourth quarter. Chants are up by 3, John. A field goal only forces overtime. And their kicker, well, he ain't missed from 50 all year. We can't kick for a safety tonight. We have to go for the throat. Coach Miller's hands were gripped tight on John's shoulder pads, his face red from the biting wind and adrenaline. He had to scream over the roaring, deafening swell of the state championship crowd. He looked into John's eyes, past the smudge of black grease paint, searching for panic. But he didn't find any. We're sitting right on their 40-yard line, Coach Miller rasped, pointing a gloved finger at the turf. Exactly where you've been running that damn ghost routine after hours. I have watched you from the office windows, Roland. I thought you were losing your mind with those weird steps. But right now, they've got our standard playbook mapped to a science. Your play is the only thing they ain't seen. A shock of pure surprise, followed by a fierce surge of pride, shot straight through John's chest. Coach Miller had been watching, and he's actually greenlighting it. The feel was almost as if something was coming up green for John lately. Not just something, but pretty much everything. The family dinner where he won at least some freedom, and now the coach showing him trust as well. He didn't care if they won this. He had already felt like he had. Just the recognition alone was enough of a win for him. "Call it," Coach Miller commanded, giving John's pads a hard, reassuring slap. "Bring a trophy home, son." John sprinted back onto the field, his cleats gripping the cold turf. The white lines, well, they felt exactly the same as they had 2 months ago. 40 yards out, canvas target. The canvas target from his autumn practices was gone, replaced by the reigning state champions, a wall of towering, aggressive defenders waiting to crush him. He stepped up to the huddle, 10 pairs of exhausted, weary eyes locked onto him. "All right, listen up." John's voice was steady, anchoring the shivering circle of his teammates. "Clock's dead. This is the last play of the season. We're running it. Neon switchback on 3. A collective beat of silence hung over the huddle. Wait, for real?" Hands came up. Mikey, the starting center, a boy built like a brick wall with a permanent smear of mud across his forehead, let out a breathless, half-hearted laugh. "Coach actually is letting us run the trick play? He told me to go for the throat, Mikey." Teammates had spent the last 2 weeks practicing the strange, rhythmic choreograph in a small group drills. They knew the beats. They knew the pacing, but it had always felt like a myth. A what if. They'd never actually get to risk it in a real game. But now, well, the reality hit them like a shot of pure lightning. The skepticism melted instantly into a fear of pumped-up desperation. John grinned at the nickname. Oh, wait, whoops. Moving on. I scrolled and I lost it. There we go. Skepticism melted into a fierce, pumped-up desperation. Mikey leaned in, slamming his massive fist against John's chest plate. "Hell yeah! Either way, boys, we got closer to state championship than this school's seen in 20 years. Let's give them something to watch. See you on the other side, Kelly." Mikey, being John's best friend, knew where the play came from. John grinned at the nickname. "Break on 3. 1, 2, 3. And instead of 3, the team roared, "Kelly!" showing their faith in their leader. John paused for a moment at the break, which the word was still on his lips. His team was behind him. His coach was behind him. And looking over their heads, he could see his parents. And it all came down to this play. If he succeeds, most likely it's going to college, or he's going to college. If not, he'll still be the hero of this moment. The huddle shattered. John walked up to the line of scrimmage, stadium noise fading into a low, distant drone. He dialed up his internal frequency. He didn't have his gray earbuds tonight, but he didn't need them. That pulsing 4 on the floor bass line of the song was already booming in his skull. 1, 2, 3, 4. He put his hands under Mikey. He looked across the line He put his hands under Mikey. He looked across the line at the defense, watching them shift their weight, completely confident they already had the game won. John took a deep breath of the freezing air. He knew the play. He knew the flow. Set, hoot! And that's Act 1, Scene 4. And here's for the last one for the evening. Act 1, Scene 5. Sit, hoot! The universe fractured into violent, chaotic motion. The defense line surged forward with a deafening roar of plastic and steel. Mikey slammed into the opposing nose tackle. a brutal, bone-jarring crack that John felt through the soles of his own feet. The pocket was already collapsing. The reigning champions were blitzing, bringing everything they had to bury him into the frozen turf. But John didn't panic. The roar of the stadium, the freezing sting of the wind, the terrifying wall of armor rushing toward him, it just all fell away, replaced by the thumping, relentless rhythm in his head. 1, 2, 3, 4. And instead of dropping back into a traditional rigid pocket, he executed that fluid, cross-stepping glide to his left. It was beautiful. It was a jarring sight on the football field. A 6'2" quarterback moving with the weightless lateral grace of a stage performer. His body weight leaned heavily to the left flank, his hips committed, his shoulder dipping as his eyes locked onto the slot receiver running a deep routine. The trap was set. The opposing safety and linebacker, they swallowed that bait whole. John watched them shift their momentum, their cleats chewing up the turf as they cheated hard to the left, racing to intercept the bullet pass they were certain was coming. Now, the beat dropped in John's mind. John pivoted. He didn't scramble. He spun, utilizing his core and flawless balance. He executed a graceful, spinning turn that allowed him to glide effortlessly behind the protective, straining wall of his offensive line, sweeping all the way over to the right of the field. He snapped his gaze back to the original target downfield, and he hesitated for a fraction of a second, and he waited for a beat. That phantom... he waited a fraction of a second, waiting a beat for the defense to adjust. It was an agonizing, breathless eternity. He could see the blitzing defensive end bearing down on him out of his peripheral vision, arms outstretched mere inches from crushing him into the earth. If he threw too early, the cornerbacks would recover. If he threw too late, he'd be broken in half. Every instinct screamed to panic, to throw, to run. But John held the beat. He forced himself to wait until the defense was completely caught in the middle. Their weight shifted the wrong way, their eyes widening in sudden panicked realization that they had been utterly fooled. John planted his back foot, the kinetic energy rushing up from the turf, through his hips and exploding into his right arm. He let the ball fly with everything he had left in his soul. Rasp. The football sliced through the freezing air, a tight, flawless spiral cutting through the stadium floodlights. John didn't get the chance to see it land, or if it landed. The defensive end hit him like a freight train, drove him violently hard into the ground, into that unforgiving turf. The wind blasted from his lungs, his helmet bouncing against the ground as the weight of the defender buried him. And for a second, there was only the sound of his own ragged breathing inside his helmet. And then the stadium exploded. It was a physical shockwave of sound, a deafening roar cascading of screams, sirens, stadium horns that shook the ground beneath his back. And through the tangle of limbs, John looked up at the referee down the line. 2 arms raised straight in the air. Touchdown! Hands grabbed John's shoulder pads, wrenching him up from the turf. Mikey was screaming, his face red and wild, hoisted John into the air, and the rest of the team swarmed them. The sidelines emptied. The bleachers were a chaotic blur of school colors and falling confetti. John stood at the center of the storm, chest heaving, tears pricking the corners of his eyes beneath his visor, and he felt a profound, overwhelming sense of vindication. This was his play, his rhythm, his terms. Every argument about curfews, every overprotective boundary his parents had ever set, the grueling friction of the last 4 years, it just all dissolved into the freezing December air. He had proven he could survive, at least here. He had built his own bridge to the future, and no one could take this moment away from him. He looked up into the roaring stands, searching for the faces of his parents, his heart bursting with a triumphant, brilliant certainty that his life was finally, truly beginning. End of Act 5, or Scene 5. And that's as far as I'm comfortable reading. But what do you guys think? I mean, it is literally just setting scenes and getting things set up, which is probably why it was so easy to get it to the point where I felt comfortable. I hope I didn't put you all to sleep. Good build-up. And don't worry. It's not a sports story. Nope. Nope, what, Infinite? I'm sorry, like, didn't put you to sleep? I hope not, you were driving. Good to listen to while driving? All right, cool. See, I wasn't sure, but you said you were driving, so normally that means you're lurking. So I went ahead and read anyway. Well, and I'm pretty proud of what I've written so far. I'm literally happy with it. I am all the way actually into Act 2. I just need to polish up Act 1 before I'm really happy with it. And I've only got 5 more to go. 5 more scenes in Act 1. No, that is not a unique thing. It's not as unique as you might think. Have you seen how other people drive? Driving with your eyes closed is not unique. In fact, I swear to God, there's a lot of people that do it. And I don't like them. No one should ever be driving with their eyes closed. But, I mean, I know you guys know that his parents are weird. Like overprotective. Like overprotective to the point where they hired a security, or not a security guard, but a private eye. Yeah, that's some overprotective shit right there. But there is definitely, obviously, more to the story. And the problem is the payoff for that doesn't come until Act 3 to really understand what's going on. Oh, I knew what you meant. Like I said, the payoff for that isn't until Act 3. I mean, I could tell you, but it kind of ruined the story. Because I could tell you, and then I'd have to explain a whole lot of other things, which would ruin the story. I will say, they are not former CIA. That I can guarantee you. Well, and at the rate I've been writing it, probably won't be too much of a wait. They are not former government at all. This isn't a spy novel. Well, and that's kind of the point is, you know, the whole point is leading you down that road. Like, I mean, the whole point, I mean, if you pay attention to the story, I kind of give it all away with his football play. I'm pointing you over here just so I can throw it over here. But all the clues for where it's going are there, but it's only in the backwards. You can keep guessing. I'm not saying anything more. I told you, if I actually said yes to any of these, it would ruin, and I would have to explain so much else. Yes, I'm trying to be, like, all the clues are there, but you don't have the full clues. Like I will say that, I'm trying to explain some things without spoiling anything. So yes, obviously, come on, it's supposed to be a little suspenseful, a little thrilling. I'm pointing you one way, it's supposed to go a different way. And that's fine. That's obvious. If you're reading a book, that's what you want. You want something that you don't expect. But by the time you actually get the payoff for what was really going on back here in Act 1, you've gone through Act 2 without understanding anything of what's going on, and then you're reminded about all these clues in Act 3. To me, that's good writing. Maybe to some people it's hack writing. I don't know. I'm enjoying writing it. Chimp in the chimney. Yeah, there you go. Yes, I'm channeling Edgar Allan Poe. Well, and like I said, Ghost had showed me some stuff that he had wrote, and it's like, I realized that I hadn't tried to write for a while, so I sat down and started writing, and, well, this is what I got. And keep in mind, this story has been in the back of my head for better than 10 years. I'm not exactly sure when this story actually started. And is this the original story? Hell no. That original story is so... there's no point to it now. Yes, blame Ghost. And Raven. And Simply even. And you guys. None of you complained when I wrote little narrative beginnings to my, my fireside talks on Wednesdays. When I wrote these little blurbs of stories for you guys to hear. Nobody has complained about that. So I thought, okay, well, maybe my writing is a little bit better than I thought. Even though these were just little veganette things that I used to introduce the story. Exactly. Well, don't you blame miracles on angels? I've been wanting to sit down and write since I was in junior high at least. I wrote stories forever. My mom reminded me that way back when, I made my own friggin', in junior high, I made my own graphic novel. If I find an angel that doesn't have a dented halo, I will quote Mark Twain to them. A virtue never tried is no virtue at all. Tinfoil. Hey, we all have to have a little devil in us. We all have to have a halo. Nothing wrong with that. See, that's the beauty of being human. You're both. You're both your own angel and your own demon. Pure and simple. I blame the whole community, damn it. Y'all have been so encouraging, you've inflated my ego. I'm back to drawing like I was when I was a kid. I'm back to writing like I was when I was a kid. You guys literally make me feel young. I really friggin' appreciate it. What is that emoji? Oh, it's a lighter. Okay. My brain was seeing an arm holding a cleaver with a red eye behind it like a skull. Like it just didn't look right to me, but that's what I saw. That's the best thing I can say though, is just that, doing this is really, like, I don't care if I end up talking to just you guys every night. If this is all my audience ever gets to be, I don't care. To be honest, because this encourages me to keep just doing whatever I want to do. And maybe you guys shouldn't be encouraging me, but you know what? Tough it. You started it. It's all your fault. But I think I'm going to end it here tonight. I know we kind of got a late start. No, we're not going to end it here. I have a question for y'all. Good, keep doing it. Do I need to change the times that I go on? Like, is there better times for you guys, or is it just that time's been wonky for everybody lately? Like, do I need to shift it up? Do I need to go back to starting at 10 o'clock and going till midnight for the minimums? It's summer, people's hours change, people's schedules change. I just want to know what's better for people. Because most of y'all know I have a pretty open schedule, and as long as I'm not streaming when others are streaming, I want to be here for my audience when my audience has the availability. If what I'm doing right now is good, I'll keep doing it. Current time or an hour earlier? Okay. I don't know how much I could make an hour earlier because I'm streaming with Ghost, Raven, and Patience. And I like to have a little bit of a break, but if that's the case, I might do it like maybe a half hour earlier. So basically just give myself a little break in between and pop back on. Well, yeah. Oh, and that's fine, Jade. I totally understand that. No, I wasn't meaning like going later. I'm just trying to figure out if there's other times. I mean, even earlier in the day. There's some days that I could start at noon Central Time. I just don't take the full break. Okay. Well, and some days I struggle with just, going on early, but I also know that if I go on early, people aren't expecting me on. You all know that I'm on at 9. I've done that pretty mostly for, at least close to a year now. 9 to 11. And if that's what people want right now, that's fine. And I still might experiment with other times later on, especially since the wife's new schedule is going to be even wonkier than the last one. Speaking of kooky. So I might just, pop on when I feel like it earlier in the day if nobody else is doing anything. Like tomorrow, Simply and I are going to be doing Fears to Fathom together at 5. I think that was the timing. Yeah, ouch. I think she's going to be able to pop home every third weekend. I think is what we figured. But she also hasn't even gone to training yet. Yeah, see, I was supposed to go and visit my friends. The wife gets called Monday for a job. We find out Tuesday what the actual dispatch is. She literally has to go down Thursday night so she can report at 7 a.m. Friday morning. Friday was when I was supposed to go down and visit my buddies. And I even contemplated doing it anyway because, I mean, it'd only be leaving the cat without one meal, maybe two. No, probably only one because I'd feed her early that day. But it'd just be that one morning meal because I'd just go down Friday, stay Friday night, come back Saturday. But we also don't have the gas money right now because she also has to have, you know, motel room, all of that. So, yeah. We can't really do it, but we'll figure it out eventually. Somehow, some way, we'll figure it out. But anyway, that's all I really had to say. You know, it was just like, hey, if you guys need me to, you know, other times work better, just talk to me about it. We'll see. And don't feel like I'm going to like automatically do it because you ask. I mean, obviously I'm going to look into it, see what's there, that kind of thing. If it's viable for a better time for you all. But I'd rather hear from you than not hear from you. You know, it's just like critiques on the story that I read tonight. I'd rather hear the critiques where I could improve. Well, of course, yeah. You know, don't feel like you're obligating me because I opened it up. I want to hear what's good for you guys, and I'll figure it out if it's good for me or not. But this, you know, like I said, the same with writing. You know, with the story I wrote, I want to hear honest answers. You know, if it's good, I'll keep going. If it's weak in some place, I mean, I'm going to go back through and clean it up again. But, you know, either way, like I said, just thoughts for the future. You know, feel free to reach out. Most of you know how to reach out to me in your own way. You know, and if there's things that I can do, if there's games you want me to play, don't just tell me on stream, send me a message somewhere. Because half the time I forget. But starting next Tuesday, we will be playing The Wolf Among Us. We're still playing Blueprints. Unless you guys want me to take a break from that, but I doubt it. Thankfully, we finished Frambo because I wasn't too happy with that game. It's not a bad game. The art style was wonderful. The gameplay was a little wonky here and there. But anyway, I hope to see you guys tomorrow evening, 5, playing a new Fears to Fathom co-op with Simply. That's going to be fun. And tomorrow night, we'll be drawing. And Friday night, I'm taking off. I'm just going to still take the Friday night off because I'm going to hang with my buddies on Discord. It's like, fine, I can't go see you guys. I'm at least going to sit down and I'm going to talk with you guys. That's really it. But anyway, I will see you guys later. Hope you had fun, and I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye. Thanks for showing up, Gossip. You hope you had a good night.